On today's show, going to be discussing a potential hole in Pablo Torre's reporting. Mark Cuban giving us a little bit more ammo on the defense side. Going to be talking about it all on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You were locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA, been a Clipper fan for 20 years, been covering the team on my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for 5, and 3 right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell on the road to 8,000 subscribers before the season starts. And of course, you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about if Pablo Torre as a whole in his story. Mark Cuban bringing up another good point. I'm going to be also discussing Cuban's overall stance and one of the flaws in his stance, just to play devil's advocate, because, I want to be as fair as I can in the reporting of this story. And, of course, I'm on the Clippers side. I'm a Clipper fan. I'm always going to ride with my team. However, I'm not going to be delusional and just only say, we're innocent until proven guilty and there's nothing else they can say about it. I'm not doing that. We're going to give all the information out because this is the talk of the town. And when I say the town, I mean the NBA. So let's talk about what one of the holes is. Mark Cuban stated on September 20th that responding to someone when, funny enough, my man Jonathan Eng, who is a listener of Locked On Clippers, but also a guy that I've met and, attends games and he's at the games. He's been in my vlogs before. He responded, and Mark Cuban actually retweeted him. And Jonathan's tweet was, "You realize that part 3 from Pablo Torre was mainly because Cuban gave him the threads to investigate? Cuban is pointing Pablo Torre to investigate the business part of aspiration, but he lacks the knowledge/understanding as a sports journalist. Pablo Torre needs to consult with business SMEs." So Cuban liked that tweet, obviously. He retweeted it. And essentially what he's saying is that Mark Cuban is questioning everything about Pablo Torre's reporting, so then Pablo Torre can then go do more research and uncover his point. He's kind of giving him ammo, which you could argue, is that good for the Clippers or not? I honestly think it's good that Cuban's questioning him because he's the only person that's really questioned him. Everyone's like, oh, well, Kawhi Leonard got paid $28 million to do nothing. There's no defense for that. It's so weird. It's so odd. And then you have the Clippers and Ballmer paying aspiration or investing in aspiration around the same times that Kawhi Leonard's getting paid. It's weird. And, that's why Kawhi Leonard went to the Clippers, because he got things under the table. So there's a lot of evidence, obviously, against the Clippers, I should say. But somebody responded to Jonathan's tweet saying, "Poor take here, assuming Pablo doesn't know about the business side, but that's not his investigation. That's a legal issue already being addressed. The point is simply, Ballmer didn't care about Aspiration's legal trouble or looked at the books because he just needed them to pay Kawhi." That's his tweet, this guy at SAC Opinions. Yeah. He's got no proof behind that statement that Ballmer just needed aspiration to pay Kawhi. I genuinely believe, even if we are guilty, that Ballmer did invest in aspiration as a means for, environmentally helping his case to have the Intuit Dome be, an eco-friendly stadium. The carbon credits thing, the carbon emissions thing. I think he wanted an environmental sponsor like that, and it worked right up his alley. But anyway, Mark Cuban quote tweets that and says, "No. This is 100% a cash flow story. If you think money went from Ballmer/Wong to Kawhi Leonard, you have to be able to show it, not just say the dates for payments were close to the dates of the investments." All right, now it's me talking again, your host. So what Mark Cuban's saying there is, all that Pablo Torre has shown is Ballmer and Wong invested in aspiration, Kawhi Leonard got paid to do nothing, and these employees that I'm anonymously having on the show claim that it was cap circumvention, yet they seem to lack a lot of knowledge about why the deal was made and all that kind of stuff behind the scenes that Sandberg decided. But the point is that Cuban is saying, you're not proving that Ballmer and Wong paid Kawhi Leonard directly or paid Aspiration with the intention of that money going to Kawhi. You're just saying they paid him, Kawhi didn't do anything for Aspiration, and the times that Kawhi Leonard got paid are similar, or very close, I should say, to when they invested. Now, here is where Mark Cuban brought up something that caught my eye. In Pablo Torre's episode, one of the, the ones that he's done, and I've made sure to watch all of them up until this latest one that I believe came out on Monday, so I'll be doing an episode on that again later in the week, but of course, Media Day is going to take precedence first when it comes to this show. But when Pablo Torre showed us, the 1.75 thing, that the fact that Kawhi Leonard was getting paid up in increments of $1,750,000, which would equate to $7 million a year, and then eventually get his $28 million after 4 years. These were the dates in which he was supposed to get paid every year. On or before March 31st, June 30th, September 30th, and December 31st for each year of the term. The first payment shall be paid on June 30th, 2022. Now, we saw a payment that was allegedly the first one in July of 2022 on Pablo Torre's show for $1.75 million. Then there was the late payment in December. I don't remember Pablo Torre showing a September payment, but they talked about the payment in December that was late, 9 days after Dennis Wong invested, which everybody was like, oh, clearly, Dennis Wong invested so that Kawhi could get paid almost the same amount. Cheaters. It's clear. They circumvented the cap. In terms of Kawhi Leonard, right, and all the pay dates that he was supposed to get, I calculated all the months that he was supposed to get payment up until the bankruptcy, and it does turn out that there would be exactly $7 million left for him. So if he got paid every single one of those quarters, even though the company allegedly had no money and the Clippers ended their partnership with them in 2023, was he getting paid, and how was he getting paid? We assume that he's getting paid because it says $7 million outstanding balance, but Pablo Torre never showed those payments. He didn't. And Mark Cuban mentions that. He says, particularly when you only show the first 3 payments were close to investments, but none of the sources can say there were more payments. Just working backwards from the CH11 filing, as if nothing else could impact the contract terms, is lacking. Then they take what I said about carbon credits, and the source says I'm right, which got me to find the depot transcript that clearly says that they make no money from the credits and clearly says they want them as assets, and there is no evidence that they are doing the approach of buying and markup with 80% margins. This was all in the transcript that the pod found but ignored. But of course, in the interest of entertainment, the pod did mention the time he took the 5th and apparently ignored the other more than 500 pages. Why? Because it would contradict the sources that obviously turned out to not know shit about how the founder was spending the cash to build the credits asset base. I'm going to stop right there for a sec. There's a lot to unpack there. Essentially, Mark Cuban's calling them out for only showing the first 3 payments and not the rest. And maybe Pablo Torre has the documentation that Kawhi got paid that 1.75 each quarter up until March of 2025. But again, if that's his case, is there still money left over from Ballmer? Because there's no proof that Ballmer invested after March of 2023 at this point. So it sounds a little weird. Where is that money coming from? He's still with, Sandberg and them are still paying Kawhi Leonard to do nothing even after the Clippers have pulled out? Very interesting. It's a different perspective that I haven't really considered. And then, Mark Cuban calls out the sources, saying that there's no evidence that Aspiration was doing the approach of buying and marking up. The pod ignored it. And of course, they mentioned the times that Sandberg pled the 5th in court. However, they only mentioned the Ballmer-related ones and not all the other times that he pled the 5th, which made us as the audience believe that those were the only times that he pled the 5th in that, in that scene. You know what I mean? So I literally thought, oh man, he's only pleading the 5th when it's about Ballmer. But apparently there were a lot more times that he pled the fifth in that, my brain is scattered right now, but you know what I mean, when he was under oath. So continuing, he says, but they should have known if they were still employed there because they had real customers buying the carbon credits. Huge companies, far bigger than the Clippers. How did they not know the economics of their business if they talked to management and did the payables and finance, unless they were fired prior or they were lying? But just talking shit because the dates are close, despite public evidence that the money was being used for other things, and there are more viable explanations for why they invested the money, proves absolutely, positively nothing. Then to rely on sources without saying anything more than they heard things with no sourcing for what they heard. And to point out that a payables form said critical, as if that would be strange when your comp is not only the name sponsor, but they're also a huge customer for carbon credits, the one part of your business that has a chance of succeeding. And the guy who owns the company is your mark to get more cash to keep the founder out of prison and maybe keep the company alive. Yeah, this is about the NBA and Kawhi Leonard. I honestly would love to see the Clippers get nailed. It would help the Mavs, just like I said on the pod. But all these facts and everything I have posted is public information. It doesn't take nearly as much time as people think, which truly is a big part of the point. But this is also how certain parts of NBA media has always worked. Lots of supposition, people hearing things, sources say. But this isn't an NBA story. It's a business story that happens to include an NBA team. Coming up, going to be talking about what the hell that all means. I got to tell you a little something about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. We just finished week 4 of the NFL season, and I can't lie, my Rams are sitting pretty at 3-1. And we've got a huge game coming up on Thursday against the San Francisco 49ers, maybe my least favorite team in the National Football League. And right now that game is slated to be at SoFi, too expensive for my blood. And the Rams are -5.5. As far as the Chargers, they play the Commanders on Sunday at SoFi as well. So you get a little double SoFi games this weekend. Chargers are -2.5 for that one. And then Sunday Night Football is going to be New England versus the Buffalo Bills. And the Bills are -8.5 for that. Damn, they got the Pats on Sunday Night Football. So where do you go to bet on these things? All those games, FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. So that's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, so continuing to talk about Mark Cuban's stance and what that all means, what I just said before. So, first off, he's questioning these employees, saying they should have known about how the founder was spending the cash to build the credits asset base if they were still employed there because real customers were buying the credits. How did they not know the economics of their business if they talked to management and did the payables and finance? You know, these people said I was at aspiration till a certain time. But again, we don't know these people. You know what I'm saying? They're people within the finance department or something. They seem to not have much of an idea about why the Kawhi Leonard deal was made. They all are saying it was to circumvent the cap. And again, the people on the outside, the people watching this episode are going to be like, dude, you believe a rich billionaire like Mark Cuban over these, regular workers? You're delusional because you're a Clipper fan. You can say that. That's fine. I'm just giving both sides of the coin. I'm not saying that those sources are wrong. I'm just telling you what Mark Cuban is saying, that they should be questioned. How did they not know the economics of their business if they talked to management like they said? So Mark Cuban's also said, just talking ish because the dates are close, despite public evidence that the money was being used for other things. So he's essentially saying there was money that was being used for other things, and it wasn't just Kawhi Leonard getting paid, and there's public evidence of that. And by the way, it is true though that these sources are kind of just storytelling. They're basically just storytelling. They're saying, "Oh, it got bad, when this happened, or this is when the company was starting to go downhill, and this is when people started to see that it was fishy." This is storytelling essentially. So, as Mark Cuban said, this is how certain parts of NBA media have always worked. A lot of suppositions, hearing things, sources say. So he is questioning their sources big time. And honestly, I'm here for it because it's funny. So people are wondering, what is Mark Cuban's stance? His whole stance is that Sandberg is a crook. Sandberg is a scammer. Until you hear from Sandberg or Uncle Dennis or Kawhi's agent, he should be the one that's more questioned for being fraudulent or cheating or whatever, not Ballmer, because he's scamming people for tons of money. And again, the no proof that there were payments. The pod left out all the other times he pled the fifth. The pod sources didn't really know about the deal like that, and we only saw 2 payments revealed. When did he get the other payments? So Cuban's stance is also that why would, Sandberg want to pay Kawhi Leonard to have Ballmer be happy and be like, look, we'll sponsor your star player. Just, keep sending us money. Which you can argue maybe that's circumventing the cap itself right there. But it's technically not, because it's not uncommon for a company to do a sponsorship deal with a team and then sponsor their best player as a result. It's a business. It's a business. So Mark Cuban says maybe, he was trying to explain the rationale of Sandberg saying maybe keep the guy that they were scamming for money, Ballmer, to stay alive, happy because they kept the agents for his best player happy. I don't know, but I'll ask you. And then he says, what did the Clippers really gain? I'll talk about where Mark Cuban is kind of neglecting something or not speaking about something or an angle he's not looking at, which might be not the biggest flaw in his defense, but just a flaw in his defense. But anyway, this guy, Legal Moves Only, that I've talked about, has gone back and forth with Mark Cuban on this show. He responded to that tweet, and he said, this isn't a cash flow story. This is a bitter spouse paying a hitman $50,000 and the hitman spending it on cocaine and strippers and then killing the ex. Cash is fungible. He said, cash is fungible. This isn't a case about traceability and deniability. Doesn't matter that in 2022 they spent $56 million on carbon credits. It was Clippers greenwashing. They only needed at most $30 million, and didn't comply with CARB's 50% local requirement. So Cuban responds by saying, looks like they didn't pay Kawhi Leonard more than 3 payments. No fungible cash available, and the dates don't align for them to owe $7 million. Although by my math, they did align to owe $7 million. Compare the contract dates of payment to the company lowlights, particularly when they brought in new management who the restructuring agent said had no clue about all the fraud and were running a new business with a new name at Katona Climate. When did the payments to Kawhi Leonard stop and why? And the guy responds by saying, this isn't a tracing / cash flow issue. No idea what happened with Aspiration after March 2023. They didn't go bankrupt until March 2025. So perhaps they skeleton crewed and tried to survive on cash. Seems weird they would only list debt to Kawhi Leonard as $7 million if they owed him more. I'm not a bankruptcy guy, but would assume you'd want to list actual debt, not a fake lower number. Thus, I presume they somehow managed to keep paying Kawhi. So again, this guy doesn't have any proof that they kept paying Kawhi, and with what money either. So Cuban says, but we don't know if they did. And this was in the reporting. Efforts to secure, now he's quoting something, efforts to secure alternative DIP financing from over 10 lenders and 13 existing investors were unsuccessful, which was during the 3rd year of the contract. That was quoted. Think it would be, and now Cuban's talking again. He goes, think it would be accurate to presume that they went to Ballmer for more money, and he said no. He kept that fungible cash in his pocket, despite Kawhi Leonard still being owed money for 2023-24 season, again, the 3rd year of a 4-year contract? Or do you think he just changed his mind and didn't care if Kawhi Leonard got paid or what Uncle Dennis would say or do at that point? Serious questions. So now he's asking the questions that matter. And the guy responds, the real question is, what did Steve know and when did he know it? It's one thing to claim you were conned. Clippers claim that happened 2022-23. Why would Sandberg not mention Kawhi Leonard? And Cuban responds, because his marketing people hated the deal. Remember, he did not have an executive position at the company. He told the CEO to sign the deal he negotiated. He wanted it, marketing people didn't. Remember, the very next month after the Kawhi Leonard deal was signed, he told the execs effectively he didn't care if they liked it. He's giving Kawhi Leonard $20 million of his own stock. That's not normal in itself. So the guy asks, the real question is, what did Steve know and when did he know it? Did he know that they were going downhill? Did he know that they were in a rough spot, aspiration? Why would he give money to a sinking ship, essentially? And, the guy's saying, why would Sandberg not mention Kawhi Leonard when he was under oath or whatever like that? And Mark Cuban says because his marketing people hated the deal, as they did. In Mark Cuban's eyes, he's only paying Kawhi to stay in Ballmer's good graces. And then the guy responds with, if Sandberg knows that Ballmer is his lender of last resort and aspiration is having cash flow issues, if the whole point of the Kawhi Leonard deal is to, get him paid and have good favor with Ballmer, why wouldn't it ever get mentioned? So Cuban talks also about in regards to Kawhi Leonard, he says the point of it was that Ballmer, there was like fake finances, right? Fake transcripts or fake financials. And if Ballmer's looking at fake financials, then he's getting conned and he doesn't know that they're a sinking ship. So essentially Cuban said the bigger point is that Ballmer and Wong's investment may have been close in date to Kawhi Leonard's payments, but if Sandberg connects the two in any way, that is an obvious tell that his financials are fake. Ballmer thinks, like the lawsuit I posted, that the company had more than $100 million in cash and was about to be profitable when he and Wong both invested. So he's saying that Ballmer was led astray, he believed something different, and if he and Wong invested, they would be profitable again. So that is Cuban's take. Very complex. And he says, to find out what really happened with the Kawhi Leonard contract, you have to start at the end of the Kawhi Leonard sponsorship deal and work backwards. We know he didn't get paid after March 2025, the last year of the deal that they declared bankruptcy. And I think I've already read that before. But, did he get paid the last quarter of 2023, 24, and 24, 25? The book says $7 million outstanding balance, but we have not seen proof of the payment. So that is Mark Cuban's stance. But coming up, I'm going to be explaining the flaw in his logic. Not logic, but something he's neglecting. I got to tell you a little something about Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. And Monarch Money's really helped me get my finances in order. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. For me, I was paying for Apple TV, I was paying for so many different things, and Monarch Money cleaned that up and showed me what I was paying for, and I got to cancel some of those, so I was right on track with my finances. If you have a busy life, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. All right, so here's the one thing that Mark Cuban has been kind of neglecting, and that is that he keeps saying, what did the Clippers have to gain from doing this? And if the agreement was made in 2021, like between the Clippers and Kawhi, I would agree, and that's what I first thought. But then as I started hearing more evidence, it made me think this had to have been something that was agreed upon when Kawhi Leonard signed and Ballmer was going to find the right company to finagle with, essentially. That's what makes the most sense, because Kawhi Leonard getting something like this, an illegal benefit essentially, after he tore his ACL, he doesn't have the leverage like that. Like, where's he about to go? He was never going to go anywhere. It was all about when he had the most leverage that Uncle Dennis probably said, this is what we want. no-show endorsement or just an endorsement deal. You know what I mean? That you can help us get for an outrageous amount of money. And of course, maybe Ballmer didn't have anything on his radar at the time. I'm just saying if we circumvented the cap, and this is true, he didn't have any company at the time that was able to, adhere to that request by Uncle Dennis. So what Mark Cuban's neglecting is the possibility that this was an agreement in 2019 that was, we didn't see come into effect until they found the right company, and Kawhi Leonard ended up signing with them in 2022. He keeps talking about 2021. And in 2021, I agree with his point. It doesn't make sense. So, because, why would Ballmer risk anything like that for an injured player? It was because the more logical thing is he's risking it to get Kawhi Leonard to not go to the Lakers, which they used as leverage, which eventually got us to trade SGA and all the picks for Paul George. So that's the story. Mark Cuban believes that Stanberg wanted to get in Ballmer's good graces and keep skimming money from one of the richest men in the world. So he got Kawhi Leonard this endorsement deal. Cherny claims, the other CEO that left, claims that Kawhi actually did have things to do, but he hasn't mentioned what. Because then he left. He was like, I left, and so I left right around the time he signed it, so I never got to see it. So there's still so much to unpack with this. There's so much that we're going to have to wait and find out. Once training camp really gets going this week, I probably won't do as many episodes on this, but while it's still relevant, it's the most important thing right now in terms of the Clippers. It really is. Because the talk of the league. But the next episode, we're going to be talking about Media Day. And I still have to do Kawhi Leonard's ranking on the top, the Locked On Top 100 and see what the people around the league think about him. Also got a stat preview episode coming soon. So it's starting to heat up, ladies and gentlemen. We're getting to that point where we're at Media Day, training camp, and that means we're almost at preseason. So you already know what that means. We're almost back. Year 4 of me doing this show. Got to love it. And some people, of course, got to hate it. But I know, Clipper Nation, you got my back. I got yours. You already know it's one family at the end of the day. Clippers versus the world, not Stans versus the world. Clipper fans. If you're a Stan listening to this show, though, I still appreciate a lot of you. I just don't see eye to eye about following a player from place to place, unless you're an international fan. But even then, I still think supporting a team and a team sport is better. And if you do support the Clippers, wherever you may be, I mess with you. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dime Dropper Pod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper, LA Sports, and NBA content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, where I want you to subscribe and hit the notification bell so we get to 8,000 subscribers before opening day. Can we do that? You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.